The Honourable Ben Dawkins.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. I understand that this bill is largely about funding of political parties and donations to political parties. On that basis, I asked the question about tax deductibility of political donations. I know from basic research that the Australian Electoral Commission verifies with the ATO, I suppose, that a party is registered and therefore a donation to them is tax deductible. Is there an equivalent relationship or reporting between the WA Electoral Commission and the ATO? Is there any communication about the tax deductibility of donations or the eligibility of political parties for tax deductible donations from the department?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. So through you, Chair, tax deductibility is a Commonwealth issue. It's not a state issue. In relation to what we're proposing to do here in the bill in terms of the disclosure of donations and things of that kind, they'll all be available publicly to everybody. So if the Australian Taxation Office wishes to use that publicly available information to shore up its work, then that's entirely a matter for the ATO.
Members, the question is that Clause 1 do stand as printed. All those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those to the contrary say no. I think the ayes have it. The question is that Clause 2 do stand as printed. The Honourable Martin Aldridge.
Thanks, Deputy Chair. Parliamentary Secretary, I just wanted to ask a question here. It could probably be asked in different, in other sections of the bill as well, but I'll just deal with it at Clause 2. We've got 3 subparts to Clause 2. The first one in A is self-explanatory, as is C. I'm just wondering why the relevant sections in B have been grouped together, if there's a simple explanation for that.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. In the interest of brevity on using our time efficiently, so I do have an amendment on this clause. I was going to allow other people to speak initially about it, and however, no one wants to speak, so I'll just go straight to the amendment, I suppose. Yeah, sure.
Opportunity to speak. It's you've sorted the call. It's you got the talking stick member. Off you go.
Okay. So it's rather confusing with the notice paper the way that it appears here, because the first few amendments, in fact, listed under Clause 4, shall we say, ancillary to the main object, and the main object, shall I say, of this amendment. And I know I do get some laughs from the room, but this is about lowering the voting age in Western Australia to 16. My friend Brad Pettit is not here at the moment, Honourable Brad Pettit, and I know that is Greens policy and it's been introduced in the federal parliament in the past, but that is what I'm attempting to do today with this amendment. So the substantive amendment, Deputy Chair, is actually in Clause 15, and the members can see there quite simply that it replaces 18 with 16 years. So if it pleases the Deputy Chair, then I will basically talk in those terms, even though the initial amendments we're talking about in Clause 4 are ancillary to that. In Clause 4 really talks more about the need for the definition of elected to be deleted, about attaining 18 years, and it also talks about people under the age of 18 being silent electors. My motivation for this is quite simple. I don't think that it's up to us to determine necessarily who should get the vote in this state, because by definition those people are not here to speak for themselves. So that would be an argument, but I don't think 14-year-olds, there's very few 14-year-olds pay tax. So I'm basically also led, Honourable Martin Aldridge, by one of my constituents in Margaret River, and I did speak about this in my inaugural speech, Emma High-Inc, and she heads up the Make It 16 campaign in Australia, and we have reached out to Emma's office, and I would simply say this, from her website, the Make It 16 campaign does talk about strengthening democracy, and it says democracies thrive with broader participation, the expansion of voting rights from men without property to women, Indigenous people and those aged 18 to 21 in the 1970s has consistently strengthened democracy, granting voting rights to 16 and 17-year-olds in Australia. Australian elections and referendums will bring about a similar positive impact. So my logic, and I think for me it's evident, but maybe for others not so much, but there was the front page of the West Australian did talk about this particular act resulting in a potentially 100% pay rise to the political parties, and based on the last election result, possibly a pay rise of $3 million per election to the WA Labor Party. I think that's unfair for people who pay tax, and that includes people as young as 16, if they're not even allowed to vote. So what you're saying, my uncle back in the 80s was involved in the federal parliament, and he used to talk about the user pays system. So this system is actually the person who doesn't get to use it still pays. So that young people who are paying tax are actually paying money to political parties via this bill with the electoral funding amendments for a service or a vote that they don't even get to have. I just think that's fundamentally unfair, and I think that overrules any argument about the merits of young people versus old people and so on. Other parts of our law do actually set out that young people are presumed to be competent and aware of what is happening and of the decisions they make. I might use as an example, Deputy Chair, I know it's Labor, I think it might be the government's policy, and I haven't kept totally up to date with this, but to raise the age of criminal responsibility to 15. So by implication, what we're actually saying is from 15, you have an awareness of what you've done, the implications of what you've done, and are able to make decisions, really, because we're actually sending those people effectively to jail in some instances. So again, back to the Make It 16 campaign, and this is my motivation for giving the young people who are involved in this campaign a voice here today in the WA Parliament. And it says here, by 16 we can work full-time, pay income tax, serve in the army, drive a car, get married and be charged with criminal offences. We have the right and the capacity to be heard, to shape policies that affect our lives and to be an integral part of our democracy. So I'm persuaded by that. I wish my friend from the Greens was here, because I know it's Greens policy, but mindful of the fact that I have been told in a roundabout way not to take up too much of your time today due to the impending holidays and so on. So I've talked about Emma. I would say, like, this is a substantive thing that we can do for young people. I said in my inaugural speech that young people are unrepresented in this House and in the other place, and I was pleased. Obviously, it was great when the Honourable Magenta Marshall was elected, because she remains the only person under 30 years of age in either House, as I understand it. So I would say to the government, rather than doing what I would call virtue signalling about making substantive change for minority groups, and I know the Honourable Dan Caddy is now an advocate for the housewives of Dawkins after his member statement the other night, but instead of paying lip service to things, let's make a substantive change for people in our community that are making requests of us. They can't vote on it because they don't get a vote. They can't even vote on you. So someone has to speak up for them, and that's what I am trying to do today. I will just simply say that I do believe it is unjust for young people to be effectively charging twice the amount of tax towards political parties, the major parties. And I did find those documents for the parliamentary secretary. I know he told me he would print them off the internet for me, but I was able to get my... No, I'm not criticising. I'm just saying that he was quite right when he said that they're available publicly. So the figure, and I don't know if it's worth tabling that document. Can I seek leave to table that document, this document, please, Deputy Chair?
The member seeks leave. Is leave granted?
This
leave
is just
granted. The paper is tabled.
This is simply the donations, or not the donations, the electoral funding.
Member, you've tabled the document, so if you could give it to
electoral funding to political parties at the last election in Western Australia, 2021, which shows, what was it, 3.3 million to the Labor Party. So if maybe they won't get as many votes in the next election, but they will get something in that ballpark. So we might expect that with the doubling of the per vote rate from $2 something to $4 something, we may suggest that that figure may go up towards...
Order, member. Just remind the member on his feet that we are currently on clause 4. So if you want to make further remarks relating to your amendment, you should perhaps consider moving your amendment. And to be of some assistance, I know you mentioned that the SNP can be quite confusing to follow. So understanding order 132B, a member may seek by leave put a range of amendments at the one time. Amendments in any one or more clauses or schedules at the same time by leave can be put as one question, but you would need to indicate the clauses that you're moving en bloc.
That makes perfect sense, Deputy Chair. So I will move 2/4, 3/4 and 4/15 in one.
The member seeks leave. Is leave granted?
The only advantage, or the only complication with that is that Thank you for the unsolicited advice. I was just trying to explain that would make them also a silent elector, but I suppose that's probably not controversial. So it's okay to include that in this batch of proposed amendments. As I was saying, I think I was going to say that 3.3 million to the Labor Party, it might be 7 next time.
Members, the Honourable Ben Dawkins has moved the amendments 2/4, 3/4, 4/15 on supplementary notice paper 130 issue number 3, and the question is the words "to be deleted" be deleted. All those of that opinion, the Honourable Matt Swinburne.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. So I note that these things have now been put together, and I'll give a response to this general issue, member. So what I'll note at so I'll give a global response. I don't intend to give a government response to every other amendment that might relate to lowering the age to 16. What I'll say is that arguments about expanding the franchise to 16 and 17-year-olds are not without their merits. And to be frank with you, member, it's probably, of all the amendments you put on the notice paper, the one that is the most meritorious. However, the government is not seeking to do this at this time. It's not our intention to lower that. We've not indicated that that's something that we have any contemplation in doing. So I strongly encourage, of course, any 16 or 17-year-olds that you've referred to that are very interested in the political process and in our democratic institutions to engage with them as much as they possibly can. And that might include, for example, joining a political party at 16. Not all political parties, but I'm sure most political parties accept members at 16 and 17, and they can join those political parties and be involved with elections at election time. They can turn up at election time and hand out how to vote cards if they choose to do so. They can attend branch meetings and discuss the politics of the day and all of those sorts of things. That is entirely within the capacity of 16 and 17-year-olds. You do raise the issue about taxation, and I will note, as a matter of clarification, that there are other members of our broad community that pay tax and don't get to vote, right? And 16 and 17-year-olds are probably not the most aggrieved of that category. So permanent residents don't get to vote unless they fall into a very special class of permanent residents that were here before some of the, the compulsions about becoming a citizen and voting, and that's a small and diminishing group over time of permanent residents. So the vast majority of permanent residents don't get to participate, and they still pay tax and those sorts of things. So whilst your argument, as I say, about 16-year-olds is not without merit, we are not supporting your amendments.
The Honourable Ben Dawkins.
I take that as a great win that the Deputy Chair, and I'm grateful to the Parliamentary Secretary for acknowledging the merits, to however classified or characterised, that may have been hidden within these amendments. I'll simply make the point that it's the increased amount of tax that individuals, including 16-year-olds, will have to pay in order to meet this figure, which was 3.3 at the last election, likely to be 7 at the next for the Labor Party. And it's that increase that I say triggers the requirement for 16-year-olds to be allowed to vote, because they're now being asked to pay double the amount for something they don't even get to use.
Members, the Honourable Ben Dawkins has moved the amendment 2/4 and 3/4, the words to be deleted. All those of that opinion say aye. Those to the contrary say no. No. I think the noes have it. Members, the Honourable Ben Dawkins has also moved 4/15, that the words to be inserted. All those of that opinion say aye. Those to the contrary say no. I think the noes have it. Members, the question is that clause 4 stands as printed. All those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those to the contrary say no. I think the ayes have it.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. So with regard to the notice paper, version 3, Deputy Chair, I seek leave to move 1452 and 7452 together.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted.
And if I could just talk to that, there is a slight bit of complication, Deputy Chair, in the sense that 7452 has now replaced what I did have in about the very intriguing issue of incorporation of political parties, and it's now been replaced by this one. But if there's any members to my right that, or anywhere for that matter in the chamber, that did want to talk about incorporation, they can come to me. But to save us time, and instead of trying to get incorporation put back on here, I'll just talk about it as it is now. But what 7452 does is it deletes the existing definition of an eligible...
Member, would you mind reading the amendments, please?
Me?
Sorry, can you put the... Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'll move the amendments in my name, and I seek leave to have 1452 and 7452 together.
That's already been done.
Yep. I move the amendments in my name.
Yep. The Honourable Ben Dawkins. The question is that the words to be inserted. We are... Just I'll check, sir. The question is the words to be inserted. And to be clear, I'm referring to 14/52, although we are dealing with them at the same time. The Honourable Ben Dawkins.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. So the principle here, and I'll be brief, I've already discussed this in other parts of the discussion under Clause 1. The Honourable Martin Aldridge knows what it is that I was proposing. All this really does is talk about the eligible political parties for the increased funding, and I've already spoken about the figures there in terms of the increased funding for political parties. It was on the front page of the West as a 100% pay rise for political parties. This is the article that was also part of that, which actually was behind the front page. And what's the date on this one? 14th of the 11th, 2023. I seek leave to table this article.
Is leave granted? That document is tabled.
So what I noticed in this article, and it's the principle I'm talking about, is that the Honourable John Quigley talks about the increased transparency coming at a big cost. So there is a transaction, you might say, social contract or something being suggested here, whereby when we double the, as the words say here, near doubling of taxpayer-funded reimbursements made to political parties, that we are getting something in return. This is a principle that the Honourable John Quigley is talking about here. And that is the principle I'm seeking to enforce, if you like, in terms of my proposed amendments. So if I go to the second page of this article, underpinning the overhaul, characterised by Mr Quigley as delivering on a commitment to transparency, integrity and accountability, and this is underpinning the overhaul, is a massive increase to electoral reimbursements. So I say the people should be getting something for that. I say that the best way of doing that is through making it mandatory for recipients of increased electoral funding to incorporate. I say that because, and the Honourable Sue Ellery has also already assisted here. I beg your pardon? I did try to explain that. There's been an error, but for the interest of brevity, so what's happened? Yeah, I did try to explain that. I've just spoken to the clerks about it. So I had proposed the democratic endorsement principle as something that could be suggested, Honourable Martin Aldridge, if incorporation did not succeed. But instead of that happening, I'm not blaming anyone, but the clerks have just deleted the incorporation idea. So I'm speaking about them both as once. Okay.
Members, I think the Honourable Ben Dawkins is doing his best to explain the process, but member, there is two amendments in your name in front of you, and I would ask you to. Honourable member, I would ask you to contain your remarks to the amendments in front of us.
Okay. So I won't be specific at this point about incorporation versus the democratic endorsement principles, but I am going to speak, which addresses both, about why I believe that if you're going to get funded, that you should provide a copy of your constitution, be that incorporation or be that addressing what I call the democratic endorsement principles. I believe that is the trade-off that political parties, the social contract, that they should deliver to the people, to the electors, that they will behave in a certain way. Okay? So that is the principle I'm talking about. Why give a pay rise to an organisation if they're not to be delivering something in return for that? I mean, it's the whole principle of public funding, and part of what I thought I was going to be doing if I got elected to this place is to look at public administration and accountability and a return on public funds. So that's why I say that this definition of eligible political party needs to be changed. So what I wanted to say, Deputy Chair, was that there is that, I say, implied within this, a return that is needed for the people of Western Australia. So I did say that when I first actually spoke to, I won't say who, but members of this place in 2020, I was encouraged that that's what we do in the upper house, is we look at public administration and return on taxpayers' funds. As I was saying before, and this relates to incorporation, so if you just bear with me for a little bit longer, the Honourable Sue Ellery did say that with respect to, this was on the 7th of November, with respect to the Women's Interests Grant Fund, or Women's Grants for a Stronger Future, I did ask why the Honourable Sue Ellery or the government or the Department of Commerce or whoever that body is requires these grant recipients to be incorporated. And the answer was that incorporation...
Sorry, Honourable Member, I'm going to have to take you back to the amendments that you have put in your name. And
okay, all right.
The clause 1 debate has finished. We are dealing with very specific clauses and your amendments, please.
I won't talk any more about incorporation because it's been deleted from the notice paper and I can't do that now anymore, okay? So that's what thank you, Deputy Chair. I won't talk about incorporation. It's been deleted. So I will talk about what was the second option, which is on the notice paper, which is the democratic endorsement principle, and I'll abandon incorporation. The House knows my views on it. I've been asked to make out that case and I won't talk about it anymore. It's the subject of a private member's bill, so forget about that. The democratic endorsement principle is, which is the subject of this amendment, so I will no longer try to cover two in one, is about why would we fund a party that does not have democracy at its core in terms of electing candidates for this place. The Parliamentary Secretary did say to me the other day, if you don't like how a political party pre-selects its candidates, then join another party. I don't think that's acceptable. I think with this amount of funding, I do believe that parties, political parties, are effectively public institutions and should have internal democracy. I could talk about, and I'm well versed on this issue, and I know it entertains some people when I talk about Labor Party pre-selections and other people not so much. But the point is that people like Hayley Edwards in the seat of Rockingham recently, as much as I admire the Honourable Magenta Marshall, people like Hayley Edwards have been excluded from participating in a plebiscite of members, people with great support within the community, and this continues to happen, particularly in the Labor Party, whilst we put no demands on them in terms of incorporation or something such as what I'm talking about here in regard to the democratic endorsement principle. So all we're saying is, let's have a plebiscite of your members. If you're going to take public funds, get your house in order. People are to be endorsed for this place and the other place and the place in Canberra if the members vote via a plebiscite. And that would be, under this amendment, and it may well be fairly elaborate wording, but a democratic endorsement principle. The Act already talks about endorsing candidates. That's what we're paying the political parties to do. That's what the taxpayer wants. And why can't, and that's what members of political parties want, is they want to be able to have a vote for who goes through as the candidate. The last member vote for the Labor Party was in 2012 for the seat of Tagney, as far as I'm aware. And I don't know, and I'm happy to be corrected, of who in this House in the Labor Party was actually brought to this place or endorsed via a plebiscite of members. Because the admin committee manages to circumvent that and simply eliminate anyone who's not endorsed by a particular union. So that's all. I'm just calling for some internal democracy, and I think it's a fair thing for taxpayers to have and our children to have, and our taxpayers to have, if we're paying that money, that we should insist, and we do it for other grant recipients, other people that are publicly funded, that they have to operate with democracy internally. Bowling clubs do it. So why can't we do it with this? We don't pay anyone near as much money as this in Australia, I don't think. I would say the WA Labor Party is the largest unincorporated recipient of public funds in Australia. Anyhow, I thank you members for your time, and I simply refer you to this rather elaborately worded democratic endorsement principle, which I say, by these two amendments that I've just referred to, has to be in.
The question is the words to be inserted. The Honourable Ben Dawkins.
Which I say have to go into this Act in return for the increased funding, so that there is internal democracy, because internal democracy in political parties, the role of political parties in our democracy is misunderstood, and it's actually huge, because that is, and if people don't get a vote on who is endorsed by political parties, then effectively they don't get a vote, or their vote is much more compromised when it comes to an election. There should be two votes, one for who is endorsed by the political party, especially the major parties, and then a vote at the general election. Both go hand in hand if democracy is to be improved in well, let's say this state. So I won't say any more. I don't know if there's any interest for any of these amendments, and it's been made clear to me that there's a limited appetite to delay our Christmas holidays or anything like that. So I will limit my remarks to just saying that the democratic endorsement principle is set out at 14/5 amendment, goes hand in hand with 74/52 in that it changes what is required from a political party before the taxpayer puts their hand in their pockets and subsidises the activities of political parties. And what do you want me to say now, Deputy Chair? I seek that my amendment be moved.
The question is the words to be inserted. All those of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Those to the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. The question is that under 74/52 the words to be deleted be deleted. All those of that opinion say aye. Those to the contrary, no. That has failed.